Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Amorphis, Borderland, out September 26 on RPM. The album has 10 tracks, 50 minutes in length, and this is the band's 15th full-length studio album. They are a Finnish progressive metal band. As you have come to expect from Amorphis, this album is extremely well constructed. The design has the overall album in mind in order to create an experience that's going to be entertaining, engaging, and immersive, and allows the record to still give room to the songs to have their own space, but never forgets what the overall experience needs to be. That ride, that journey that Amorphis is always able to create with their albums is alive and well on this one. Perhaps a little bit more simplified because the songs are a lot more accessible than the ones, for example, in Halo. But nevertheless, the way they designed the album is always with the listener in mind and always with the experience of a full-length record as the end goal. As far as the sound on this album, I mentioned Halo and I have to mention it again. Halo was a lot more demanding of a record. It asked a lot more of the listener, having a lot more progressive elements. I would go as far as to say even perhaps being a little bit darker than Queen of Time. And this album slingshots back to where Queen of Time left off, is a much brighter sounding album. It's a more accessible record, a lot less progressive, a lot less demanding. It's an album that plays extremely well, that has incredible melodies. The sound on this record really elevates not just the melodies of the songs, but also the brightness that comes with that kind of sound, with that kind of texture, with that kind of richness. Now, it's still a very rich sounding album. After all, we're talking about Amorphis, so still you can expect songs that are very layered, that have a lot to offer, that combine sounds extremely well. All of those things are true of any Amorphis record, but I think the simplicity in which these songs are presented and the simplicity that the sound offers really masks a lot of complexity that exists within these songs and within these song structures. So if you're going to talk about radio friendly, if that's even a thing in metal, this album definitely checks that box, and it definitely allows you to better engage with these songs and be taken back more by the melody, more by the vibe, more by the atmosphere of the overall sound and the individual songs, more so than trying to be super technical and creating a much thicker experience around it. I appreciate this album a lot more. To me, this is a much better record than Halo, and it's an album that really offers a lot of great ideas, a lot of great sounds, but it definitely brings you back to those simpler times that perhaps Queen of Time had to offer you before, if I'm talking about the latest couple of records. Now, within the sound experience of this album, I think there are so many different elements to talk about, and I want to touch upon three because I think these three really define this album extremely well. The drums being one of them. I thought the drum sound on this album gave us soul to this record, or at least allow the record to have a more defined soul. It's a great drum sounding album all around. It just fills in the tracks. The drum sound is very warm on this record, and it really fills in the tracks, allows them to not have any pockets within, but still giving room to all of the other elements to breathe and to intertwine with that amazing warm drum sound that the album has from beginning all the way to the end. Then if you look at the keys on this album, incredible from a melodic standpoint. A lot of the melodies and the way they surface are really pushed forward by the keys. There's a lot of keyboards on this record, but not in a way that takes an impact from the other elements, being the guitars or the drums. I just felt like the keys have a big role to play on this album, as they normally do on Amorphis records, but they did it in a way that added to the overall vibe, to the overall feel, to the overall thickness of the songs, and it just contributed in a very subtle way at times, and in a very not so subtle way at times, making that experience a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more overall rich. But I really felt like the keys on this record were important from a more melodic standpoint and not from a technical standpoint. They emphasize the more melodic side of the record, and therefore they create that sense of brightness that the album overall has. Now, guitars. I love the guitar sound. It's a great guitar sounding album. I wouldn't say versatile. I would say it's perhaps a little bit more straightforward. I like the fact that they used acoustic guitars on a few tracks on this record, and I also like the fact that they allow the guitar melodies to play a much more focused role and a much more driven role in how these songs come across and how you navigate through them. The guitar sound, as the overall sound, has a lot of richness to it, but it's a simple side of that richness. It doesn't feel like you have to peel a bunch of different layers in order to really get to the nitty-gritty of what the guitars are doing. The guitars really float at the surface and allow for this album to have a very calm demeanor. While the keys invoke brightness, the guitars invoke calm. And even the melancholy that exists on this record, perhaps a little bit more defined by the vocal performance at times, but I still feel like the guitars also play a very important role in that aspect. So while I don't see the guitars as being super versatile on this album, they're very impactful and they're deep rooted into everything that this album offers from a sonic standpoint. Now, vocals, Tommy is outstanding at his best. These songs for me is where he really shines. Songs that have this sense of simplicity to it. This songs that feel really quick to absorb by the listener's ears. You don't have to really work really hard on this album. You just have to kind of sit back and enjoy it. And on tracks that have this overall vibe, Tommy's voice is just absolutely perfect. It's the cherry on top. He's able to navigate through them with extreme ease. His clean vocals are phenomenal. On this album, I felt like his clean vocals really added a lot of melancholy. Even though the tracks feel very bright, very open, very happy, he's able to bring some melancholy with his clean vocals that makes the album feel like it's offering you a little bit more, and perhaps hides that forward aspect that it has, or that straightforward aspect that it has. And then with his harsh vocals coming in to help the tracks feel a little bit heavier, because overall this is not a super heavy album. It's definitely a more melodic driven album than it is a heavy album. So his harsh vocals add some darkness that really lacks musically, and adds obviously some heaviness that also really lacks musically. So he's able to balance out the tracks really well by using those harsh vocals. Adding heaviness to the overall volume that exists in the sound really creates a much heavier presence as far as the tracks are concerned, and that to me is a great way to balance things out and make the overall record a lot more playable, because to me this is a record that has incredible playability. 50 minutes just goes by so quickly. The design really helps the listener navigate through these 50 minutes of music, but when the songs are good and you have a collection of tracks that has amazing choruses, the chorus on this album sell the songs. They really are the climax of the tracks. They really are the finality of those journeys. So this album has a ton of that. So whenever you create an album like that, you're always going to have an album with a very high level of playability. This is a great Amorphis record. I really enjoy this album. I needed this palate cleanser after Halo, because if you watch the channel, you know I'm not a huge Halo fan. I was actually quite disappointed with Halo, and I felt that when the album came out, I felt that it was strong, but it was an album that didn't really carry well for me in terms of the playability that it has, because of how demanding it becomes. This record doesn't have that issue at all. So I really love this album. I think this is another masterpiece by Amorphis. Borderland is a record you must check out. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I picked Fog to Fog. This track has a great melody, super bright and open song. Keeping the main melody of this track, the one that opens up the song, as its main melody, and allowing that to run all the way through the song. Sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower, but keeping that as the focal point, as the spinal cord of the track, I think was absolutely pure genius. It allows them to add other elements on top and at the bottom, but keeping that centerpiece there really makes the song feel like it has a sense of continuity. It allows the song to still be very dynamic on the edges, but in the core, the song is very stable and together. And that's definitely one of the elements that sold me on this track. The chorus, super open, super bright, even lighter and brighter than the verses, and it's a very fluid track. I would say this is a very epic track with some hints of a cinematic theatrical experience. Then you have a song like Tempest. Tempest, it actually feels very melancholic. As a track that it may not seem melancholic from the get-go, but it does feel that way. And it has, in my humble opinion, the best chorus on the album. The chorus on this song is just beautiful. The melancholy in the chorus comes from the vocal performance and the lyrics. And that doesn't take nothing away from how bright and how hopeful the track is at times. Specifically when you look at the verses, specifically when you look at the melodies that the track have. Even the melody in the chorus is very hopeful, feels very hopeful. So the ability to use a vocal performance on this track that brings in a little bit of an underlining darkness, an underlining melancholy, mixes really well with the overall joyful experience that the melody of this track offers. The acoustic guitar pieces that are spread out, that are interlaced in this track, absolutely delicious. I love the layers that this song has. I love how big it is, but how simple it sounds. Last but not least, Borderland, the title track. This is definitely a bigger sounding song. It's not a heavy song, but it's a big sounding song. So it has a lot of volume. And you're going to get that volume from the drums, from the bass, from the guitars, and then obviously with the keys intertwined in there. So it's a track that requires a little bit more to unpack. It's one of those songs on this record that is not as straightforward, accessible as perhaps the rest of the album is. And the ability to create some songs that are a little bit more challenging on this album without necessarily taking them too far, it's definitely important, because it allows the record to have the right ebbs and flows, and for not every song to have that sense of simplicity or to be straightforward or too straightforward. So this song, Borderland, definitely offers a little bit more to the listener, definitely asks a little bit more to the listener. It has a different kind of experience, it has a bigger experience. The vocals on this track are super dynamic. The vocals on this song really go in a lot of different directions, and I really enjoy the fact that the melodic side of the track is where you're going to find the consistency. Everything else is constantly moving, constantly changing, very dynamic. Like I said, the biggest sounding song, or one of the biggest sounding songs on this record, not necessarily a heavy song, just a lot of volume. This is it, Amorphis with Borderland, once again out September 26 on RPM. Hit me up in the comment section, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.